There we go, yo. What up, world? It's your boy KJ Bradley once again with the world's greatest chaplain, Mr. Lance O'Neill, and we are two Pogues. Check it out. I know it's unorthodox to see us on a Sunday, but we missed you guys, and it is time to get it in. A lot has been going on, so as you can see, we are super unorthodox. I got the Raptors in the background running them up. I got Chappie driving from a soccer tournament. We are all over the place. I got the dog running around in the yard. It is bananas in here, but we are going live because we have got to get this out. We have got to talk about it. Chappie, how you been?
Oh, I'm good, man. All good. I think today we qualify as the fastest podcast today. Yeah. I'm doing about 80 miles an hour right now. Speed limit 70, so I probably ought to go 79. As everybody knows, you don't get pulled over for 9 over.
Well, we're gonna wish you safe travel. Let's get it on. Boom. So I'll preface it with this. So what do you want to talk about?
Gee, what has been going on in the world recently? I think this is going to be one of those that there's not really necessarily a simple solution in terms of, hey, how do we save the world on this one? But I do think there's something to be said for understanding the difference between not just war and peace, but when you ask most people what's the opposite of war, most people will say peace. And that's not the case. The opposite of war is strength. Because if you have strength, nobody is going to ever mess with you. And so we have a situation now in Israel between Hamas and Israel, where Hamas comes out and throws an absolute haymaker at Israel, punches them square on the nose, takes hostages, kills little old ladies at bus stops, takes babies and murders them in the most graphic and barbaric ways. And then you have people in America and around the world going out and chanting, good for Palestine, good for Hamas, yay. And then, and at the same time, when Israel then turns around and says, oh, okay, that was a pretty good punch. Check this out. And they pull out a gun.
It is definitely. I didn't expect that to happen. Honestly, it caught me completely off guard, as it looked like it caught our friends over in Israel off guard as well. For those of you guys that don't know, Israel and Palestine is the war du jour. So we're gonna put Ukraine on the back burner for right now, and everything else that's going on. Last week, Israel kind of got
real quick. I want you to, KJ, I want to ask you a question about that, real quick.
Yes,
because I know we're going to get into Israel and Hamas and all that, right?
Yeah.
Can you, real quick, and I think the answer is no, you can't. But can you explain to me why we are? Well, I mean, I have my theories, but why are we so intent on increasing funding to Ukraine, which we have spent hundreds of billions of dollars? I believe the last number was north of $500 billion in the last year and a half. But then people are freaking out that we have aid and trade with Israel at a fraction of that. Any thoughts on that before we move on to what's going on in Israel and the war there?
Well, yeah, a couple of thoughts actually come to mind. So the first thought is, one, it's political for me to be in an uproar. If I am a supporter of Israel, I'm going to say, hey, give them everything they deserve. We got to protect Israel. But if I am against Israel, I'm going to be like, hey, why are we getting in their business? Right? But a lot of people don't realize and understand that the United States has been funding Israel for, I want to say, the better half of 50, 60 years almost now.
Over 70 now.
Yeah, over 7. Yeah, so giving Israel money is nothing new in regards to U.S. supplementation. I think right now, because it's a hot button and it's cool for everybody to have, an opinion, especially in the political climate, it's one of those things where people are gonna have, they're gonna feel a certain way about it. But that's the only big deal. Like I said, everybody can say, okay, well, we got to protect Hamas or we got to protect Ukraine. We understand giving money to Ukraine, but it's the same thing, just different. It's different side of the coin in Israel. What do you think?
I think there's something to be said with the difference between you. Well, here's the cynical part of me says this: when we give Israel money and or not just give money, but the things we do for Israel, like allow them to buy arms and all those things, there's almost always a reason when you're talking about foreign aid. When we give Pakistan $10 billion a year in foreign aid, it's not just like, hey, here, Pakistan, here's $10 billion. What we're kind of doing is politically, we're saying, hey, Pakistan, we're paying you $10 billion not to launch a nuclear weapon at India.
Oh, so, yeah, we're definitely paying the place.
That's probably. Yeah. So there's something to be said for that. And with Israel, there's something to be said for that because Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. It's the only place in the Middle East where Jews and Muslims correspond and live together on a daily basis, that have free elections, that have Christians there, that has realistically a fairly stable democratic government. And it's not like Ukraine in that the cynical part of me says one of the reasons the U.S., especially in the last few years, has dumped so much money into Ukraine is how much money is boomeranged from Ukraine right back into certain politicians' pockets. I am extremely cynical with that. I think that is one of the reasons that we are not seeing any kind of push for accounting or accountability by the GAO, the Government of what is it? Government something affairs.
Yeah.
What is it?
What's it? Government Office of Accountability or something like that. It's the budget.
There you go. I think that's
or the accountant, right? The government accountant.
Yes. Right. So they're the ones that go in and say, okay, well, for $400 billion, it was X amount of this, and this was X amount of we paid for soldiers, and this we paid for arms and all that stuff, right? Because I look at that and go, where is that money? And if we're not, and look, this is both sides of the aisle because Republicans, without pushing for accountability on anything, decide to jump in as well. And, the financial things that are at stake, and we can go into the financial things. There's a great piece by Greg Easterbrook about monetary funds and what does money actually exist, basically, is what it comes down to. Is it real? But it's not backed by anything. So if the United States government wants to say, well, we have, $5 trillion in circulation, why not just say, 5.5 trillion, 6 trillion. Oh, the debt, 300 trillion? 350 trillion. What's the difference? Just add a zero. It's a really interesting, he covers it in one of his recent articles on Substack, and I recommend you go find that if you can. I believe it's called We Are All Monetary Policy Now or something like that. But Greg Easterbrook has 2 G's, G-R-E-G-G Easterbrook. So meanwhile, back in Israel and Hamas, and you and I were talking about this, why don't you real quick, okay, I'll take the early. So Israel's formed in the early 1950s after Germany and after the Holocaust and after everything that happened, especially in Europe. Those Jews that didn't go to New York, the UN kind of got together and said, all right, well, we need to create a place where the Jews can go. And there was some bantering about back and forth where it should go. And eventually the Middle East was decided on, because for everybody that says Palestinians, that was their homeland and all that. Well, historically, you go back far enough and you'll find it's the Jewish homeland, biblically and all that, all the way back to the rise of the Egyptian power. So you want to go historical. The Jews have been in Israel for 4,000 or 5,000 years. And when you fast forward to it being wiped out and being spread to the diaspora, which is where Jews just kind of go all over, and then the Holocaust happens, the UN forms and says, all right, you can have this little piece of land in the desert, your historical home. The Jews all moved back. You had a lot of them did at least. You had people in New York that were re-immigrating back to Israel. This is what people will call the Zionist movement, and you'll hear people say they're anti-Zionist, and they'll say something like, well, I'm not anti-Semitic, I'm just anti-Zionist, which is a ridiculous argument. That's like saying, you know, I'm not against Native Americans, I just don't think they should be given any land. So it's a ridiculous argument. But so the UN comes in, they create this land, everybody comes back. Now the Arabs at this point, being Muslim, and Muslims having a long-standing hatred is probably the word. We'll just say bias against Jews, which includes a Quranic verse that basically says that Jews will be so evil that even as they go and hide behind rocks, the rocks will cry out, "Lo, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him." It's called the sword, you know, the verse of the sword. And so there's always been this animosity. Muhammad, to one of his political moves, when he finally had gained military power in Medina, felt that the Jewish group, one of the families that had been there and been a supporter of his, but he believed that they weren't supporting enough. He ended up ordering.
I think we're losing you, Chappie.
It took 3 days to behead all of. Oh, can you still hear me?
Yep, there you go. You're back.
Oh, I'm still there now? Okay.
Yep.
So it took 3 days to behead 700 Jewish men, right? And that was a military thing where Muhammad basically was going, all right, nobody's going to mess with me anymore. It was a political and power move. I don't think anybody would argue that was God saying, hey, Muhammad, yeah, go ahead and kill all these people because they didn't support you enough. That's kind of what it was. They didn't support him enough. So you have these people all move back to Israel. All around them, the Arabs hate them. They have two major wars. They have the 6-Day War and they have the Yom Kippur War, both of which Israel basically just wipes out the armies of combined Arab forces. In one of them, Egypt comes up from the south. At the same time, I believe, and if I'm off on any of this, please, just I can't go exactly, but I'm pretty sure on my history on this.
So far, you're good.
So Israel comes up from Egypt comes up from the south, and in a delaying action, Syria was supposed to hit them at the same time, and I could be vice versa on who was supposed to go first, but one of them stalled. One of them didn't move. I believe Syria didn't move. So Israel was able to wipe out the one army, and actually, you know what? I think it was Syria was supposed to attack, and they were the ones that came in first, and Egypt was delayed because they went and wiped out the Syrian army and then turned south, and then when the Egyptians came in, they just plowed through the desert and ended up controlling the entire Sinai Peninsula. They gained the Golan Heights. They really expanded how much.
Sit down.
So fast forward into the late 20th century, and Israel, in an attempt to normalize or at least find some level of peace, gives back the Sinai to Egypt. It says, all right, guys, here you go. Here's the Sinai that we've had. Just leave us alone. And Egypt kind of goes, okay, that's a fair trade. We'll leave you alone. You give us that land back. And then they gave back the Golan Heights. They've given back, they established the Gaza Strip for Palestinians that had been displaced, all these things.
Yep.
Now, at that point, Israel has been conceding again and again and again from a place of strength, from a place of power, and saying, we are trying to propose and give the Arab world a reason to accept us and just leave us alone. Just stop messing with us. So 2005, Israel pulls out of the Gaza Strip.
Yep. To the PLO.
To the PLO, and I'm gonna tag out, and 2005 and on is on you.
All right. So in 2005, Israel says, all right, you know what? Hey, man, this is what we're going to try to do. We're going to say, we're going to let bygones be bygones. You guys got a government. We're going to let you guys have it. You control it. Let us know if you need anything. We'll try to be as amicable as possible. The problem that happened, though, is the PLO was a government in name only, right? So it was a shell government kind of set up, and they weren't quite equipped to manage the resources or take on government facilities. So they ended up losing control in a there's not really any other way to describe it except for a get down to lay down situation with Hamas. I hate to say insurgent group, but the more extreme political party Hamas kind of took over shortly after the PLO was recognized as the governing body of Palestine. And they were a radical wing, and eventually they just said, look, you got two options. Either you vote for us and legitimize us, or we're going to make everything extremely painful for us. The problem that happened is PLO reached out to Israel and says, hey, look, we got this issue going on. We got these guys called Hamas. They're trying to take over. Can you help? And Israel was like, nope, you're your own country. You figure life out. So with the PLO basically on their own, not having the resources to take care of anything on their own, Hamas took over, and it got even more extreme and radical as we go on. And like with every, you know, not to empathize. And what I don't want to do is I don't want to humanize Hamas, right? I absolutely unemphatically deny Hamas and all terroristic organizations. But like I said, every terroristic organization starts with a good idea, right? Everybody believes they're right and just. So the big premise of Hamas is saying, listen, Israel's trying to wipe us off the face of the map. They're trying to eradicate us. We're going to do whatever we can to protect us, our livelihood, and our people, right? So that's their premise. That's their mantra.
Okay, I'm gonna tag in real quick. I'm gonna tag in real quick on one part of that. Is that I think that the argument that Hamas had was that Israel is coming in to wipe us all out. First of all, was just absolutely fabricated, and ironically, it was Hamas and their charter that said, we are here because Israel needs to be wiped out. They do not have the right to exist, and they should be wiped off the face of the earth. And that was also the standing of Hezbollah, which is to their north, coming out of Syria and Lebanon. And it's absolutely the stance of Iran since about 1979, when Ayatollah Khomeini took over and in the theocratic overthrow of Iran from the Shah. So now you have Iran, who is funding Hezbollah and funding Hamas, and saying, all right, we unequivocally want to rid the world of Hamas, or I'm sorry, of Israel and all Jews.
Yeah. They got the mentality that the Jews are out to destroy the world, and they are there as direct descendants of Muhammad to protect the Islam religion from the injustices of Jewish people.
Oh, of course. Which is so funny. I love the argument. It's so funny the just insanity of the arguments that happen against the Jewish people. To give you a great example, when the Nazis were rounding up the Jews, it's that the Jews are less than human and have no value in the world, but they control the world government and are controlling all of us. It's like, wait a minute, they're worthless, and they have nothing good, and they don't even have the ability to think because they're less than human. but they're so organized that they are taking over the world. Wait, which is it? It's just, it cracks me up. The two-sided of this coin that has traditionally been used against the Jewish people. It's hilarious to me.
I mean, but
you're so idiots, but
yeah, I mean, you see that with a lot with extremists, right? Their whole it's to me it's just the same repeated mantra. Hey, these guys are trying to take over the world, and if we don't stand up to them, then they're eventually going to take over everything. You see it with the white supremacist sects here in America. You see it with the Nazis in Europe. Like, it's been played over and over and over. It is the calling card of terrorist organization. I have to make this certain set of people the boogeyman to justify, why we commit these heinous acts. And yeah, the ends justify the means because they're evil people anyway. And I had to get them first before they get us. So, like I said, a bunch of it, like I've gone back and forth, right? Like, I kind of walk the dog on both sides of it. Like, all right, cool. From a place of being an Israeli and saying, okay, how do I feel about this situation? And then coming back on the back end and saying, okay, as a Palestinian, how do I feel about it on this back end? And I've come to the conclusion that Palestinians in the middle, they just want to be left alone. They don't want Israel to take over any more property. They don't want Hamas to govern them. They just want to chill out, right? I got a nice strip on the west side. I got a pretty decent area on the east side. We chilling. Let us hang out. But what you have is that, again, and you starting to see remnants of that in America too. You have these very loud minority sects that are controlling the narrative for the majority of the people. That is what and that's what's bringing problems to the Palestinians, because you got Hamas, you got people out there thinking that everybody in Palestine is Hamas, and that nothing could be further from the truth. In reality, Hamas is maybe, I think I read somewhere around 3% of the population, and everybody else is just collateral damage that they're just eating it. So it's just a really shitty situation, man. I just I understand. I understand Israel. I understand Israel as a defense mechanism. I got an enemy to my north. I got an enemy on my east flank. I got the Gulf on my west flank, and then I got neutrals who lean enemy on my southern flank. Right. I have enemies surrounding me everywhere I go. I can't trust none of y'all. I'm a bomb first to protect everything I own. Right. And you understand that. But then you also empathize and say, okay, as a Palestinian, you're sitting in the middle like, yo, I was just trying to take my kid to daycare. I came home and I don't have a house no more because, everything's gone. So it's just a really delicate situation, man. And he said, I saw.
And part of the problem is, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, so I was saying I saw an article.
I want to hear the article.
Yeah, I saw. Well, not an article; it was an interview with Jon Stewart where he was, and I think I brought it up to you about it. And Jon Stewart kind of broke it down like, "Yo, who do you have? Who do you have that benefit? What do Palestinians get support? The United States can't support Palestinian citizens because they have a pact and a complicated relationship with Israel where they have to back Israel, right? The guys in the Middle East, the other countries in the Middle East, they cannot support the Palestinians because they use the propaganda of a big bad boogeyman Israel to fire up their population. That's what keeps them in control. Oh, we have to be strong. We have to fund these things, or else Israel. You see what Israel's doing to Palestine. They're going to come across the border and do it to us next if we don't take it to them. So what you have is Iran doing what they do, which is shadow funding all of the chaos in the Middle East. And then you got Israel trying to defend themselves, saying, "Look, we don't trust none of y'all. We got to protect ourselves, and we reserve the right to bomb first, and we're going to hit heavy with a hammer, and we'll ask questions after we finish." And you know, you got everyday Palestinian citizens in the middle, like, yo, I'm just trying to live my life. You know what I'm saying?
I think part of what you said, though, needs to be put into context. Israel reserves the right to hit first. Yes. That said, Israel does not just go in and randomly, oh, well, Hamas has a weapons cache here and they've got a dude with some guns there, so we're going to level the entire the entire military barracks that they have this stuff at. Israel is in an interesting place because you see the strikes that they do. They look at very, very specific military-based strikes, and they do things like I'm literally surprised that we have not heard a report that Iran was hit by Israeli warplanes. Instead, I think you see stuff like Iran nuclear program is hit by computer codes and computer viruses. I think it's become very much a cyber, in most domains, it's become very much a cyber war, although they did hit some Syrian targets several years ago. But the idea that okay, so you saw that article or the interview with Jon Stewart. I saw Sean Hannity. I saw the clip. I don't watch Fox News. I don't watch any of the news stations unless it's actual breaking news, because I just think they're all ridiculous. But he had Cornel West, who's running for president, who's a very well-known leftist and Harvard professor. And you have Alan Dershowitz, who's a Jewish professor, well-known law professor. I believe he's also at Harvard, or was at Harvard before.
No, he was at Harvard.
I believe. Yeah, I believe they basically made him persona non grata because he's not a full-throated leftist. And so they were arguing, and Alan West had written some things that were basically in support of Hamas, and he backtracked awfully hard in this interview from just a couple days ago. And when you're talking about, because they were talking about Sean Hannity and Dershowitz, we're talking about the children being killed, these toddlers and babies being mutilated and killed, women being raped and all that. And Alan West's response was, yes, of course that's horrible. But you guys weren't complaining when 530 Palestinian babies and children have been killed over the past, however many years in Israeli strikes. And that is where the context really comes into play, because I don't think anybody disputes that Palestinian children are being killed. I think what's being disputed is how they were killed. If you take a rocket or a cache and you launch them from the backyard of a daycare, now that rocket goes off, it's very specifically aimed to create terror, to make people freak out that there are rockets coming in. And if your response is an immediate strike to where that rocket came from, because that's what the technology is, that's what the technology does, is, oh, there's a launch, hit that spot, boom, right? And so that place goes boom, and it turns out that 4 kids got killed in that strike. Well, do you blame Israel for the deaths, or do you blame Hamas? Because if Hamas had not launched that rocket to begin with, Israel would have never counter-launched. And that's where I think it's important to realize throughout the years, Israel is well known for not striking back. You look at how many rockets over the past 20 years. You're talking about You're talking about 20,000 rockets over the past 20 years that have gone into Israel, and eventually they kind of go, okay, that's enough.
Israel has had their fair share, but we can't sit back and say that's like throwing a rock and then hiding your hands and being like, well, they hit me first. Israel has been known to fuck some shit up. Excuse my crassness, but Israel has been known to strike with a heavy hand.
But what do they strike when they strike?
Oh, Israel strikes
When,
unabashed. Unabashed.
what? But what do they?
Look back in,
No. Hold on. What do they strike? What does Israel target when Israel drops a bomb or launches a missile? What is the target?
Israel does not target. They do not target
What?
when they're going to Palestine and Gaza. No.
Oh, I completely disagree with you.
No, I'm telling you from a targeting background. Israel, they have the ability to target, but they indiscriminately bomb the shit out of places. When they strike back with a very heavy hand, and then they ask questions later.
When you're talking about going in, let's say for example, there was a couple years ago. What was it? Was it the AP building that got struck? I think that's what it was, right?
What's that?
And the Associated Press. They struck the journalism building of the Associated Press, and everybody was freaking. This was 2 or 3 years ago, I think, and everybody was freaking out. Might have been a little bit more. Might have been 5 years ago. Everybody's freaking out. Oh my gosh, they hit a bunch of journalists. Well, first of all, they hit it off hours. Second of all, it turns out that, sure enough, Hamas had a bunch of offices and a weapons cache in that building. So when you say they're discriminate, I don't agree. I think Israel has one of the greatest intelligence networks in the world, specifically in the Middle East. And when they strike, they're not striking indiscriminately. They are striking very discriminately. They are aiming at for a reason. They are not launching. And maybe we're just passing each other in semantics.
Yeah, no.
But to me, when you launch,
I will tell you as a target here, they are not. When Israel issues their counterfire, they are knocking out grid squares. They will ask questions after the fact. When Israel's counterfire.
But is there a legitimate target? You said it takes out a grid square. Cool. Is there a legitimate target within that grid square?
Yeah, they're using counterfire. They're using counterfire radar. But
so that's where my argument is. You could say proportionality is not fair and not correct.
It's illegal. That's a different. It is illegal, and I would say it borders the line of ethical retaliation, but it is absolutely illegal. And I'll give you a case in point, because we walked it. We walked the walk in Iraq. We used to get shot at from schools, from mosques, and we could not fire back. We couldn't destroy a mosque. If we shot counterfire and we hit a
Why not? Why couldn't we?
Even if we knew the cache was there, even if we knew the weapons cache was there, we had UAV.
But it's not that we couldn't. But it's not that we couldn't. It's that we chose not to, because we looked at it through a lens of, as Americans, we need to do what is right and what is ethical and moral. I'm moving my phone because it's overheating.
Oh, you're good. Yeah, you're good.
And so we are going to be more ethical and more keep the high road than anybody else, right? So it's not that we couldn't. It's not that even legally we couldn't. Simply the legally that we couldn't came from our own lawyers saying no, you can't do this. There's no court. There's no the
international law says you can't shoot civilian buildings, man. You can't.
Well, civilians. Yeah, right. You can't shoot civilians, but you can shoot. If international law also says if somebody was shooting at you from a mosque, that now becomes a military target. So we chose not to.
Oh, I think we lost Chappie. He will be back in a sec. What up, world? It's just me right now. I am solo dolo. I got a feeling this one is going to get really, really interesting. It's going to get really, really interesting really, really quick. So while I got you guys here, we're going to take a quick break till Chappie comes back. Once he gets back, we'll go up live. Let me see where we at. We will go live, and I wonder if I can pause it. Let me see what we got. It is getting good. Yeah, it is definitely getting good. This is going to be interesting. So I want to take the time. So I want to make sure I put that out. Yep. So I want to make sure I put that on there. So, boom. Just a couple of things we gotta upload. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We gotta make sure we get these locked in. What's up, best friend?
Can you make this to a soy?
There you go. He's back.
There we go. I'm back. Okay, so I took the phone out of the case and had it. Luckily, I have one of those Samsung that has some.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. Right, I have the Samsung that says you can keep it in water for a little bit, and it'll be okay. So I have some ice cubes here on the way back. So I took it out of the case, rubbed it down with ice, did a little Rocky on it, get the swelling down. All right, I need you to cut it. Cut me, Mick. Cut me. So, all right. So I'm sure you kept going, but international law to me means, honestly, nothing. I could not care less about international law because international law is so ridiculous in the world simply because it is absolutely inconsistent and it has absolutely two sets of laws, right? If Hamas does one thing and Israel does the same thing, the UN Security Council and international law will say, oh, well, Iran was wrong. The United States does something and China does something. China's good to go, but the U.S., oh, no, the U.S. can't do it. International law is an absolute joke. Does that mean that we shouldn't live? Does that mean that as Americans, we shouldn't live to the highest standards of ethics and morals? No, of course we should. And I'm fine with that. But I'm not okay with some other world government trying to say, this is what the law is. Dude, look at what happened. Look at what happened when they convened the World Court in Nuremberg. How many people were hung during the Nuremberg trials? I think it was like a dozen. For all the Nazi crimes, for all the Nazis they've had, for everybody that they tried and found guilty of international war crimes, of murder and rape and deprivation, everything else, they hung like half a dozen people or a dozen people. So do I trust international law and international courts? No, not at all. But again, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do better. And so when I'm looking at things like, does Israel, or we'll stick with Israel, does Israel target civilians? I don't believe they do. I believe that they look at military targets, and I've got a boy who wants to do something here. I'm not sure what. Oh, you're just leaning forward. What are you doing? Oh, he's changing his shorts. He's like, well, I put my pants on. I didn't know what he was doing. When Israel hits a military target, and they say, okay, this was a military target, and we killed 6 children, but we killed 12 Hamas leaders that were at this meeting that was held at an elementary school. Now, you can say because it was at an elementary school and because 6 children were killed, then it's automatically a war crime. The problem is organizations like Hamas hold meetings at elementary schools specifically for that reason. They are well known for using human shields. So
absolutely,
that's a big problem. So like, as a chaplain, I had a soldier who he was really struggling, because he was looking at what the United States was doing in certain situations and locations, and he was really struggling because it's like, how do I justify putting together this target for a high value target that might get bombed in Afghanistan or Iraq, this individual, this dude, when there's a good chance that when this dude gets iced, he's going to be with his family.
Yeah.
How do I justify that as a human being to say this guy is so evil that his 3 kids and his wife also need to pay the price for his sins? And that's that's at the lowest level of soldiers questioning, and that's where moral injury and some things come in. And that's where it's a very, very difficult question and very difficult outcome. But it's also where I look at it and I say, look, it's very much similar to the castle doctrine in the United States. Most states have a castle doctrine that your home is your castle and you have every right to defend your family and your home from invaders that are intent on doing no good, right? If they're coming in, if you're in Georgia or you're in Texas, somebody opens your door and walks in the front door and comes in and says, I'm going to go, I need a soda, and there's nothing you can do about it. You can legally shoot that person. It's like, no, I don't know what you're doing here. Now in New York would probably be like, well, all they did was want a soda. You can't shoot them for that. So, but in general, castle law means you can defend your rights. And I love there's a meme that goes around that says something like, the argument is, if you shoot a criminal who's breaking into your home, it means you value your things more than their life. And the argument is, no, the burglar values my things over their life. And that to me is kind of what it boils down to with Hamas and Israel. If Hamas and Hezbollah and the Arab world basically just left Israel alone and said, you have the right to live in peace, and you're not going to build these settlements in agreed upon lands that you said are, we've said nobody's going to build in those. And Israel has demolished those over the years. They've gone into certain neighborhoods and said, you guys need to move out because, hey, this is going to threaten our peace. You need to move out of here. So I think in general, Israel has, I would say, at least morally clean hands. I'm sure, obviously, they have blood on their hands because war is a dirty job. Okay. But at the same time, I just have a hard time saying if somebody comes in and consistently, like you just said, somebody comes in and consistently, you say, throws a rock at you, and if somebody throws a rock at you, you don't have the right to take out a machine gun and shoot at them. And I disagree, because to me, it's not just about the one rock. It's about taking out the one person who threw the rock and letting everybody else who is going to throw a rock know what's going to happen to them if they also throw a rock. And Have you ever read Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card?
No, have not.
Okay, that's next on your book assignment. So Ender, when he's a little, it's not going to be a spoiler, but Ender's Game is about finding military geniuses to fight a war against an alien invasion, and they're looking at kids to do it because they believe kids are faster thinkers and can do some things. So early on in the book, he has a fight with another kid, the 6-year-old, and the international fleet who's monitoring him to find out if he's going to be, the right candidate for this battle school. And he gets in a fight with another 6-year-old, and this other kid is bigger than him, and he's got his little bully friends with him, and they're picking on him, they're bullying him, and they basically corner him and say, all right, we're going to kick your butt. You're a third, which in this case, it was like the Chinese, you could only have 2 children. And so the government had requisitioned their parents to have a third child. So He was a third, so he was looked down on as a second-class citizen. And so he talks his way into getting in a one-on-one fight with this kid and just destroys him, just as a 6-year-old, just destroys him, kicks him in the butt, kicks him in the groin, kicks him in the head, all this stuff, just destroys the kid. Now, when the guys who make the decisions about battle school come in, they take him aside and they're walking with him and say, we know you got in this fight. We know you had the fight win, but that was really vicious what you did to this kid. And we saw it. And we have one question, which is, why did you do it? Why did you feel the need to not just win the fight, but to destroy this kid? And he said, well, I didn't want to. They put me in a situation where I had to fight. I had no choice. And that fight was not one fight. That me knocking him down, that won the first fight. Me kicking him and destroying him where he couldn't keep fighting, that won all the other fights. So the theory is that Ender had, as I agree with, if you're going to go in, you destroy the enemy so that they cannot come back and fight you. Why in the world? That's an error we made in Afghanistan. That's the error we made in Iraq. If you're going to go into these countries, you need to devastate them in a way that they cannot continue to fight wars and able and willing to continue to fight wars. If we had gone in, think about it, if we'd gone into Kabul and into Afghanistan and we had just, not just hurt them, we had taken out every single leader, every single person that had ever been part of the Taliban. Honestly, we should have done it in Germany. We got lucky in Germany that they didn't come back, right? But that is the theory behind it, is that you go in and you decimate your enemy to the point that they can't come back and fight you again. And if you pussyfoot around, that's what happens. And that's why with the Taliban, they kept coming back. Now, part of it is we couldn't do that to the Taliban because they were ghosts in the wind, right? Which you probably agree with, right? If we could have, we would have. But I also look at it and I go, that is why the Taliban beat the Mujahideen beat the Russians. That is why the Taliban beat the United States. They beat us. If anybody thinks we won Afghanistan, we didn't.
I will tell you the reason why we can't is because we are a victim of our own. We are a victim of our own policy. We tried that in Vietnam. Remember?
Yep.
We tried that in Vietnam. We were slaughtering Vietnamese militants by the hundreds of thousands. And the American public was like, yo, what are y'all doing? And they were like, look, dude, we're trying to win the war. This is how we win the war. And the American public was like, nah, don't do that no more. So ever since then, we've had to fight with kid gloves.
Absolutely.
So we can't.
Absolutely.
We did that to ourselves.
Can I propose? Can I propose that actually goes back to the Korea?
Yeah, absolutely.
Simply, the reason I say it goes back to Korea is simply because, and right or wrong, General Eisenhower was talked out of dropping a nuclear bomb on Pyongyang.
Yeah.
And the worry was that if he dropped a nuclear bomb, maybe Russia would come in and maybe they would drop a nuclear bomb too. But I tell you what, right now, if the U.S. had dropped a nuclear bomb on Pyongyang, even if the retaliation had been by Russia and taken out Seoul, I think today we'd actually be in a better world. Now, that's a neither here nor there argument. It's a philosophical argument. It goes back. You go back to Japan, and you used to have people today going back and re-arguing whether it was moral to drop the nuclear bomb, and it cracks me up because by almost every conventional wisdom, the 2 nuclear bombs that killed somewhere around 160,000 people between Hiroshima and Nagasaki killed 160 million, but saved upwards of 3 to 5 million lives. Yep. So 160,000 or 3 to 4 million lives.
Yep.
Seems like a pretty easy trade-off. So when you have Hamas and you have Israel and you have these countries, and when you say, all right, so Hamas is launching these rockets that are aimed, they're general rockets. Like they're not guided missiles. They're overblown.
Smart munitions.
Yeah. So they're basically overblown field artillery. You launch them and you hope it hits in the general area of where you're launching. Actually, our field artillery, as you know, are much more accurate than the rockets that they are launching. Yeah. And so when you say that, over a period of weeks, 10 years ago, Hamas and Hezbollah, I think at the time it was Hamas only, launched 5,000 rockets into Israel over a 11-day period. And then 4 years ago, they launched 3,500 rockets over a 4-week period. Or my numbers might be off, but they're extended amount of time, right? And then this time they launched 3,500 rockets within 24 hours and 5,000 rockets within 48 hours. I look at that and I go, well, you know what? If Hamas is going to escalate, and not to mention all the land invasions at that point. And if Hamas is going to escalate, I'm with Israel. I think Israel, now, before I say this, let me preface one thing. I have all the sympathy in the world for the civilians, children, women, and non-fighters in Gaza that do not want war, that just want to be left alone. And I am pissed off at Egypt, at Saudi, at Iran, at Lebanon, at Syria, and at Jordan, who all of them, if you ever go look at a map and you look at the size of these countries versus the size of Israel, and even more so the size of Gaza and the percentage of people, you could clear out Gaza and move them to these other countries, and my guess is it would be less than how many illegal immigrants are coming through the southern border of America if you spread them out equally among all these different countries. Okay. Now, maybe every year. That sounds like what?
That sounds a lot like the manifest destiny doctrine of the United States.
Well, manifest destiny at the time, if you think, but here's the thing. If you think about okay. You're going to send me down that rabbit hole. I will say, let me just say one thing. One thing about that. Manifest destiny. Beliefs are an incredibly powerful thing. Right? Okay. So the reason I think that's different here is because Israel, for all intents and purposes, has said there's a solution and it's a 2-state solution. But Hezbollah doesn't want that, and Hamas doesn't want that, and Iran doesn't want that. So they want Israel gone. They want Israel destroyed. You hear this phrase, what is it? From the east to the sea, I believe is the phrase.
That is
which
correct.
Means, and you've heard members of the United States Congress use that phrase. All right. So when you hear people say, "Oh, Donald Trump, when he says make America great again, that's an old Nazi propaganda thing. He knows it." Well, guess what? East to the sea isn't propaganda. It's a statement and it's well known. Okay. So I have a big problem with any organization and any group in any country that in their charter says Israel has no right to live. They don't have a right to exist. And to me, it goes back very much to, and I think you'll agree with this goes back to the Civil War.
when you have people today argue, mistakenly argue, or ignorantly argue, well, the Civil War wasn't about slavery. It was about states' rights. Yeah, states' rights to what? To have slaves. Like, it's right there in the Mississippi Constitution when they rewrote it. It says basically, we avow that the white race is superior to the black race, and that the black race will never have rise in Mississippi, and that slavery is a institution blessed by God and will forever be part of the state of Mississippi. So was it about states' rights? Sure, states' rights for slavery. Yeah. So I don't think that anybody, anyone who wants to justify what is going on in Israel with Hamas, that wants to justify anything Hamas does, when it says right there in their charter, Israel does not, we don't believe Israel has the right to exist, and we want to destroy Israel off the map. How do you negotiate with a group like that? How do you have sympathy for a group that actively wants to kill you based on nothing more than your religion and ethnicity? And let's just say, oh, I know, color of your skin, for all intent, again, for a similar argument. You would never in a million years have these leftists going out into New York City and Sydney, Australia, and Berlin, Germany, chanting, "Yay to the white supremacists who want to destroy the blacks in America. Kill all the blacks from Atlanta to, well, not Atlanta, probably from Houston to Atlanta," right? But at the same time, they're supporting an organization that is literally their stance, to kill all Jews that are in Israel. And if they were able to do that, it would then be extended into global, almost like, I don't know, a global jihad day. Where people in France are getting stabbed, who suddenly swastikas are spray painted on Jewish people's doors in Germany, where you have these, again, in America, you have people chanting and supporting Hamas. Remember, not just supporting Palestine, because you could say, well, we're not supporting Palestine, or we're not supporting Hamas, we're supporting Palestine. Hamas is the government of Gaza. If you're supporting the Palestinian flag, you are supporting Hamas. Because guess what? There was no such thing as a country of Palestine until Israel was made. Never existed. Go look in the history book. There's no such thing as the country of Palestine. It's been a place. It's been a geographical location, Palestine. When you look at Germany and Czechoslovakia, there's a big giant valley in between them called the Rhineland. That's not a country. The Rhineland is an area. The Rocky Mountains are not a country. It's a geographical location. And that is exactly what we're talking about when we have Palestine. So, when you start talking about how do you fix all this? Well, the first thing is stop giving Iran money that they turn around and send rockets and munitions to terrorist groups like Hamas and Hezbollah. And that goes for that doesn't just go for America.
We got to say that the official statement of the U.S. government and the Qatar government is that Iran never spent a dime of that $6 billion, and they have since chosen to refreeze it. That is the official statement from the Secretary of State. I mean, from Todd Blinken and the U.S. government.
But what about this? What about the $6 billion that was released
when the United States traded $6 billion and 5 Guantanamo terrorists for a deserter in Sergeant Bergdahl? You don't think that any of that $6 billion just over 4 years later made it back to Hamas and Hezbollah? This isn't about the $6 billion that was getting released a month ago. This is about
Did
the
you hear-
$6 billion and other money that's been released through the last several years.
Did you hear about the new shipment of weapons that they got? Did you hear the Hamas statement on where the weapons came from?
I did not. I'm guessing directly from Iran.
Nope. Bought them from Ukraine.
Oh,
Wholesale.
that's right. That's right. Gee,
So
they got them from Ukraine.
Yeah.
So
It's almost like Chaplain O'Neal's cynicism is paying off.
So it's like, we're gonna fund it one way or the other, man. We're gonna fund it one way or the other.
Okay, so with all of that said, I do want to say, no, this is going to be a good thing. With all that, I do want to say something. I want to say that for as much as I'm a conservative, and as much as I try to be intellectually honest, and I want to give a big shout out to the mayor of New York City, Adams, who came out yesterday or the day before and got in front of a big crowd of people and said, look, we are with Israel. We are with the Jewish people and their right to live peacefully. We are with them because New York is the largest Jewish population outside of Israel. And you can say he was pandering and all that. But you know what? His statement, I think, did a ton of good for the Jewish community. That people who have family members that were killed, that are still hostages, when you have Hamas showing pictures of Jewish babies that are, being, I guess, taken care of, being babysat by terrorists. I don't know. I would hope that those are the guys that they gave them with that, just don't have the intestinal fortitude to kill a baby, and that actually might have a little bit of humanity still left in them. But kudos to him.
The POTUS was misspoke. According to the White House press office, the POTUS misspoke when he said that he had saw pictures of babies being killed by terrorists. There are no official confirmed, on record, no official confirmed reports of videos or pictures of terrorists killing babies. That is the official report of the U.S. press office.
Okay, so let me say this. You're walking down the street and you see a body in the road and it's got 3 gun holes in it. This body. Well, there's no death there because I don't have a video of seeing who shot him.
That is parsing words to a ridiculous degree. We've all seen the pictures. Now, we've seen the pictures of the little old ladies at the bus stop blurred out. We've seen the pictures of the people blurred out, being dragged around from the music festival and all that. Now, one thing on that, we need to stop as media and as people. We need to start demanding that these pictures be unblurred, okay? Because what blurring does is it actually takes away the horror and the barbarity of actions. And that doesn't matter if it's in the United States. It doesn't matter if it's in Israel. It doesn't matter if it's in Ukraine. It doesn't matter if it's in frickin', I don't know, Hawaii, right? Yes. If somebody is murdered, they need to stop blurring it out because it actually makes people go, oh, well, look, that's just a blurry video. If you've ever watched somebody get killed, whether it's on video or live, it is very, very different than seeing a blurred out video. Go find, it's out there. You can go find the beheading of Daniel Pearl.
Yeah.
You can go find beheading of other terrorists in Taliban. There's a video of a Syrian pilot who was burned to death by ISIS. You ever want to see horror? Go watch a person be burned alive in a cage, and it's horrific. But it is also important to realize that these are actual acts that happen, and they're not just a blurry video game that you don't really see. Okay? Now, with that, Joe Biden's statement, as ridiculous as that is, if you had told me that 48 hours after Israel was hit in the mouth by Hamas, that Joe Biden the president was going to order an aircraft strike force to the Middle East to support Israel, I would have laughed in your face.
Really?
So I didn't think you would have. Oh, heck no. I thought he would have hemmed and hawed and said, oh, no, we don't know. We support Israel, but, I've got hairs on the bottom of my legs that are starting to, ripple, and the grandkids were playing with them. So I don't think I'm going to be able to send them. I need to go take a nap. I think that was more likely. But I am pleasantly surprised that was the reaction of this president, because I did not have faith that is what he was going to do. So again, pleasantly surprised in this case. But then again, maybe it's because he was sending them over because he doesn't want Ukraine selling all those weapons to Hamas without getting his son a cut. Maybe that was why.
But before we go, because I want to ask you, I really want to talk about. So 45 had some very interesting comments this week where he came out and to the chagrin of his party supported Hamas and said that the whole Israeli incursion is the fault of Netanyahu. What do you think about that?
I think former President Trump is showing his true lack of understanding of the world stage, and why he had people in the highest levels of government turn around on him and say, this dude cannot be trusted. I just finished the Secretary of Defense Esper's book, and now while Secretary Esper, you could see there were a lot of personal opinions, very, very personally opinionated, and things that I think he, quite honestly, I don't want to say it was treasonous, as he might say about General Milley, that Trump might say about General Milley and some of those things. I do think that there was a pretty severe lack of loyalty to the president while hiding behind his statement of, I am loyal only to the Constitution. And kudos for being loyal only to the Constitution. But in one breath, when you're saying, look, if the president orders this, I will do it. And in the next breath saying, but I don't agree with the president, so I'm going to work behind his back as hard as I can to make sure that his decisions don't happen. That's not very true faith and allegiance. That is you thinking you're smarter. And honestly, you're in charge. And that's where I have some problems with it. So, my thoughts on President Trump. I did not vote for Trump in 2016. I was pleasantly surprised about his policies for 4 years. I voted for him in 2020 because he was 3 for 3 on Supreme Court justices, which is my one policy, because I think the power that we've given the Supreme Court, you can argue whether that's right or not, but that could be a whole nother argument. But he was 3 for 3 on what I would term as traditional constitutionalists who look at the Constitution for what it says, not for what they think it might, could have, maybe should say. So I felt like I had to vote for him. Even though I voted for him, and I'm not sure we've said on this before, but the one thing that people don't understand about the vast majority of Republicans, by the way, I left the Republican Party in 2016 or 15 when he was nominated. I literally changed from Republican to an independent, and I have not changed back. But the thing that people don't realize about Trump is you can vote for Trump because you think he'll do a better job than the Democrat, even though he's a giant, egotistical, arrogant a-hole. I don't like the guy. I do not like him. I think he is basically a pretty horrible human being. That said, I think his policies are way, way better than Joe Biden's. And I also believe that Joe Biden is mentally deficient.
I think that if you had a true psychological breakdown of Trump, he would probably be found to be psychologically diminished in other ways. You know, probably, again, when you're talking about some of the arrogance and some of those things, I could see him having, being diagnosed as some form of whatever the Napoleon concept is at this point, or whatever.
Yep.
Whatever they officially call it. So I think I hope that former President Trump continues to say incredibly stupid and incredibly offensive things. I hope he's indicted. If he's been indicted, I hope that if the evidence is there, I hope he is found guilty. I hope if he is found guilty, the American people realize that he should not and cannot run for office. Now, if he's found innocent, that's a very different thing. But if he is found guilty, and I don't think in Georgia, I think the Georgia one is ridiculous to pretty clearly. I think it seems fairly ridiculous. It was politically motivated. I think let's see, he's got three main ones. Oh, the top secret stuff. I think that's pretty ridiculous, although it probably has the best teeth because he did have these documents. Now, the problem is, if you find him guilty, how do you not go back and find Obama guilty? How do you not go back and indict the sitting president right now? Probably all the way back, I don't know, maybe George W. Bush even has some classified materials. But the precedent was set when you didn't do anything with Hillary, when they found, was it a lot? No, but do I think there was more that was hidden? Yeah. Do I think that was cover up might not be the right word, but do I think the American people were told everything about what Hillary had on her server and all that? No, I don't think so. I think there were some political workings, but that leaves the New York one. And part of the problem right now is the New York one. The guy who is running the New York one is the judge is, by all accounts, a very hard left judge. New York State judge. Which, gee, that's shocking. A leftist New York judge. What are the odds?
He was appointed by Trump.
No, not the one who's overseeing the New York one.
Hold on. Is it the one in Georgia?
Not the New York trial. Yeah, I believe the Georgia trial. Yeah, the Georgia trial is the one who's being over, because a lot of people are saying that she's incompetent because Trump nominated her and she probably shouldn't have been nominated and she probably shouldn't be on the bench, and she's not up to a trial of this stature. Because part of the problem is they've filed some RICO charges against some of the people, and some of the people are getting smart because they're like, okay, you're going to charge me with that? Fine. I demand a speedy trial, which starts a clock.
Yeah,
because if you don't get the trial, if you don't get a trial in a certain amount of time, it has to be dismissed. Super smart by the lawyers of those guys. I think Trump would be smart right now to go ahead, file right now. I want a speedy trial, and I want it to be part of the RICO. But in New York, no, it's a hard left guy, and that one's going to be really interesting because he already came out and said that the Trump Inc. or whatever corporation is basically a money laundering to some degree. Because what the argument is if you go in, KJ, and you say to the bank, I want to borrow $500,000 to buy this piece of land and develop it. And the bank says, okay, well, what are you going to put up for collateral? And you say, well, I've got this other property that's up in Tennessee that's worth $2 million. So I'm going to put it up for collateral. And they say, cool. So if you've got that, then we can give you a really good rate because we know you're good for it. So we're going to give you a rate of, 2.5%. Where if the land you have up in Tennessee was actually only worth $100,000, maybe you get the loan, but instead of 2.5%, it's actually a 7% rate. Because look, that's still, we might get your land, but we also could be out $500,000, right? So that's the argument is that is what Trump was doing, was he was inflating the system. And, would it surprise me if he did and the organization did? Nope, not at all. And I think when you're talking about taxes, that's where people mess up. Al Capone wasn't brought down and wasn't sent to jail because of murder. It was tax evasion. The IRS got him. You know? So when you say, and if you own Mar-a-Lago and you're in Florida and you say, well, these property taxes, Mar-a-Lago's only worth 1.6 million. And then if you try to sell it, I'm going to sell it for 160 million. Well, it's a lot better to pay taxes on, 1.6 million or whatever the number is than it is 160 million. So we're all kind of pissed off when we get our tax assessment. Like we just got our tax assessment that says your house is worth $50,000 more than when we bought it last year. Well, that's great. I hope it is.
Yeah.
If we can sell it for that much, if we can sell it for $50,000 more than we did last year, I'm more than willing to pay an extra $400 a year or $700 or whatever it is. My problem is I don't think that's necessarily true that I can do that.
Yeah.
And so that's where I get frustrated. My wife really gets frustrated going, we have to pay more in these property taxes when I'm not sure we can, I'm not sure that's accurate, but that's what they say. And, so when Trump says these things and you have these other candidates go after him, I'm amazed that these other candidates aren't why, if you're Nikki Haley, for example, if you're Nikki Haley, why are you going after DeSantis, who's at 8% of the polls? Why are you going after Vivek, who's at 9 or 10% of the polls? Why is Tim Scott going after Haley or after DeSantis or any of these guys? You could have everybody drop out except for any one of those. Let's say everybody drops out except for Nikki Haley. Okay. Mm-hmm. Nikki Haley is still not ahead of Trump in the polls, even if you take everybody else. So why in the world are you guys taking each other out and battling for second place? To be what? The second place winner is not going to get the VP unless Trump wants it. Assuming it's Trump, unless he wants it to be. So if they all went after Trump and brought Trump back to the pack, but instead, think about like the Tour de France. He's 10 miles ahead, and the peloton, the group, they're all struggling to get to the front of the peloton without any intention of going up and getting the guy who's up front.
Yep.
Well, that's just stupid.
Well,
the whole point is to go get the guy in the front.
He's 45 I think the latest polls this week had him at 45% ahead of DeSantis, who's polling next. And it's just
45 points ahead.
45 points.
So it's not that Trump is at 45 and everybody else is at 55 combined. It's that Trump is at 65 and DeSantis is at 20. Something like that, right?
Like 12.
Okay, so DeSantis is at so DeSantis is at 12 and Trump is in the 60s.
Yeah.
In a head-to-head, or is that with everybody?
No, that's just with everybody. That's with everybody. That's with polling for the nomination.
Okay, so that means Trump. Yeah, so Trump is somewhere. Is Trump north of 50 then?
Yes.
Okay, so again, then my point stands. You could take everybody, put them together, and Trump is still winning. So why in the world are you guys not, as Republicans, why in the world are you not all getting together and saying things like, how can you vote for somebody who's saying Hamas was smart, Hezbollah is smart, Netanyahu this is all Netanyahu's fault, who every time he opens his mouth to say something, says something even more dumb than the last thing. Now, again, I voted for Trump the second time because I think when Trump has policies, and again, this goes back to the difference between speech and policies. Speech is not policy. Policy is law. It's not a law until you write it down and have it pass through Congress. So until that happens, it doesn't matter what you think. right?
Yeah.
So
Trump is
the
like
American people, wake up, guys.
Yeah, unless these polls are just grossly wrong, which
Even if they are.
I mean, looking at, and I'm on 538 for anybody that wants to look. I always go to 538 because the polls are usually within 2 or 3 points.
Pretty good.
Pretty
good, yeah.
And yeah, they got Trump polling at almost 60%, 58.4. DeSantis is at 12.7, and then Ramaswamy is at 7.2 behind him. Yeah.
Oh, and Vivek, you know, Vivek is going for the VP slot. Which I don't mind.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. He's been posturing. He knew damn well he wasn't winning the nomination. He's been posturing for VP since day one.
And it's a smart move because he's what, 35?
Yeah.
So he goes through the whole thing. He polls well. He does the truth to power thing and say
this is how the real world is. And then if he's the VP for Trump, then it's like, well, see, I was the VP. You know, I'm not just next in line. I'm ready to go. I've had 4 years of mentoring in the MAGA and in learning, being around the decision makers. And you know what? He's a young Romney at that point. And what I mean by that is he will have had all the corporate side. He will have all the stuff that going for him. And he'll still have a press that hates him, just like they did with Romney. But
guess what Nikki Haley's polling at? Guess. And
in the most recent one?
Yeah, this is the aggregate of all the national polls put together, and then they just run the averages. What do you think she's polling at? With all the momentum she's had lately.
Well, see, now it's a lot less just how you worded it. I would have guessed 9 or 10%. But with what you're saying, 6.
6.6. 6.6.
Yeah.
And you know what? The most surprising thing of it all, Tim Scott is a really brilliant guy. He plays the political game. He's a brilliant guy, and he's respected on both sides of the aisle. Tim Scott is polling at 2.1%. Like, I can't.
Doesn't surprise me.
Who was that? That was what's his name? The Pennsylvania senator. Hoodie guy.
Oh, Fetterman.
Fetterman said, you know, and I saw it. I think was that you that posted it saying the irony of his statement?
Oh yeah.
Where he posted America's no longer sending the best and brightest to Congress. It was like,
I think my favorite tweet in response was who's gonna tell him? Because you go, no kidding, dude. America is not sending its best and brightest. You're a stroke victim. You're now after claiming no disability, now you're saying anybody that says anything about you is picking on you because you're disabled. What? I thought there were no long-term effects.
Yeah. And I don't know, man. It's disheartening to see. And outside of a federal conviction, Trump runs away with the nomination. And there's nothing the Republican Party can do about it.
Well, there is, but they won't.
They can't go nuclear. They can't go nuclear and disqualify him. They can't. The backlash will be the backlash will be. You might as well just give the damn Democrats the election at that point.
Well, okay. So here's the thing, though. There is one option they'll never do it. They just won't. There's one option. Disband the party.
They could, but yeah, that's what I'm saying. You can't. There's no way.
If Trump is the nominee, well, so here's the thing. Here's part of the problem too, though. If Trump is the nominee and Biden is the nominee for the Democrats,
Biden's the nominee because which is, oh my God. So the
Democratic system is a total scam job, and nobody actually votes in the Democratic primaries. It's all done by superdelegates, and that's all that matters. Legitimately, when they say the Democrats, they pick who they want. If every I believe this is accurate. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. I believe you could take every superdelegate and have them vote for one person, and it would trump all the other normal delegates in the Democratic convention, which means you could have a situation, if the Democrats were smart enough the same way too, that everybody votes in the primaries for Biden, and then they get up and go, sorry, we just can't do it. We can't vote for this guy. He's too old. Anybody who knows him, poor Dianne Feinstein. They kept her going till the day she died.
Yeah, she voted the day she died.
Yeah, well, somebody.
No, technically, so what they said was she casted her vote by video at home that morning.
Yeah, you lost me. There we go.
Yeah, and then she passed away that afternoon, that evening, which was
so ridiculous.
I don't want to cause any conspiracy theories, but do with that what you will.
It's not conspiracy theory.
I don't know, man. It's one of them things. I don't know, man. It's one of them things. And the problem is the Democrats have placed themselves in such a hole that they have nobody, they have no alternative. It's Joe or nothing.
Yeah.
Do you know that Dianne Feinstein? I don't know if this is true. I read this, and I believe it's true.
Okay, so just to be clear, I could be wrong, but it's on the internet, so it's true. Dianne Feinstein was the richest member of Congress when she died.
Lord knows she's been there long enough.
90 years. Do you know who number 2 is? According to what I read, what's your guess?
I'd have to go on the other side, man. What's the old boy? The former speaker. What's his name? That would be my guess.
Pelosi.
Really?
From what I read, it's Pelosi. Well, yeah, because her husband has all this stuff. They have a vineyard and they have all this property and everything. But if you've been in long enough and you know, like, think of how much money you're at KJ. Let's say you only have, I don't know, $10,000 in cash that you can invest. And you're sitting in a meeting that they say, hey guys, our company is about to buy $10 billion worth of pills from XYZ pharmacy. And they are going to be the exclusive pharmacy to make these pills and distribute these pills. And each of these pills, these 10 billion pills, is going to be purchased by the government. And they're going to be given away. So it's a guaranteed sale.
Yep.
So nobody say anything because it's happening.
Yep.
But you have $10,000 and you're exempt from insider trading laws.
That's right.
What do you do?
If I'm smart, I'm calling my wife and be like, hey, honey. Go into our brokerage account.
Yeah, you know that
$10,000 we have in our savings.
Yeah.
How do you feel about making it into $500,000?
Yep.
Right? Now, do that over and over and over and over for 30 or 40 or 50 years.
I think
and now you have
one of the junior girls got caught. What's a little crazy out of Georgia? Marjorie. Marjorie got caught doing that. Was it Marjorie or the one before her?
They got caught doing what?
Insider trading, and ended up having to do a full disclosure. But she was
was it Marjorie Taylor Greene?
Yeah, she was bragging about it though. She was I don't was it MTG?
I don't know. But here's my argument. Here's my argument to that. We had in 2016, that's one of the reasons that Trump won. Remember when they were talking about taxes
and you had these people, the Democrats and the media coming out and saying, well, Trump in 2012 paid 0 in federal taxes. And he was like, yeah, I totally did. I didn't pay anything. And you know why?
Because he know the system. By the way, it was Loafer, Kelly
It's
Loafer.
the system. Oh,
Yep.
sorry.
No,
You need to fix. It's not me. It's the system.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is why Washington is broken. I didn't write these tax laws. I'm not the one who did this. You guys, and that's why. Again, there's a lot of things that Trump did that I agree with. There's a lot of things that Trump did that I don't agree with. I think Trump that Washington D.C. is a swamp. Hey man, I'm gonna hit a dead spot. I will say this: the swamp will never be drained until we move the capital to Kansas or somewhere outside of DC. We'll have this continued problem. I know. Hey, I know I'm about to hit a dead spot. I'm almost home and there's a dead spot here. So I'm going to sign off. It's been fun. 90-minute drive. Woo. Fastest podcast of the day. All right, brother. Hey, we'll do one normal, hopefully next week on a normal time, and I'll let you close it off.
All right. We out, man. That's good.
All right, brother.
Stay with it. Uh-oh. Stay.